Happy Thanksgiving, y'all! I hope that you all had a wonderful holiday and that you were all thankful for your respective blessings. And you know what I'm thankful for? The X-Men. The X-Men have been around for 57 years now, if you can believe it, and there have been a lot of members, to say nothing of the 50 million spin-off groups. And while there are many X-Men characters that suck, the majority of them are really cool, with three-dimensional personalities, awesome powers, and really interesting relationships with their fellow X-Men. Everyone has their favorites, however, and today I'm going to be talking about mine. These are my top 10 X-Men and why I love them. And just to be clear, I don't mean any adaptational versions of these characters, I mean how they are in the comics.
So to start us off at number 10, we have Kitty Pryde, also known as Shadowcat and also Sprite and Ariel, but nobody cares about that. She first appeared in the early 80s and has been a regular member of the X-Men ever since. Oh, except for when she was in Excalibur for a few years, and she was also trapped inside a planet-sized bullet for a while. But whatever, the point is that she's been a mainstay of the X-Men for quite some time.
There are a lot of reasons to like Kitty, one of which I think is that she does the audience insert thing pretty well. When she first joins the X-Men, she's just an average teenage girl, which makes her easy to relate to. If you're a teenage girl, I guess. She's also just entertaining with her outspokenness, and I think she has a lot of charisma. I also love her relationships with Wolverine and Storm, because I am a complete sucker for quasi-parental relationships, and it's so sweet, and I love it. Kitty's also gotten some really cool character development over the years. She went from shy, naive kid to outspoken teenager to capable woman who's even helped lead the X-Men, and that's just really satisfying to see.
Next up at number 9 is Jean Grey, the Phoenix herself. This lady's got a lot going for her, having been part of the X-Men since the very first issue, and also starring in what is inarguably the most famous X-Men story of all time. I personally like Jean just because she's cool. She's a fun character with a kind heart, and similar to Kitty, I really like how she's grown over the years.
Way back in 1963, the year my parents were born, when Jean is introduced, she's pretty much just the token girl of the team. Her personality is just stereotypical 1960s woman. Insecure, emotional, likes shopping, good at cooking and looking after people, all of that. She barely had a unique personality at all, but over time they took her and made her to be an actual character, not to mention making her one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe ever. Boy, did no one see that one coming. And I like that they managed to retain the kind, nurturing aspect of her personality without her having to act like, a 60s housewife. It's just really cool.
At number 8, we have Sean Cassidy, better known as the Banshee, and it wouldn't surprise me if some of you viewers just now said, wait, who? Yes, it's true, Banshee is far from being the most popular X-Men character. He's one of those characters where people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of him, but they don't really care about him, but nevertheless, he's on here because he is really underrated, in my opinion. Some of my favorite comics are from the late 70s and early 80s, where Banshee is part of the main team, and while he obviously didn't become a permanent mainstay of the X-Men like Wolverine or Storm, his personality is still really likable.
One of the things I really like about Sean is that he's pretty much just an average guy doing his part to help out. I also like his experience and maturity, which isn't always super common among the X-Men. He's also just really sweet, and the part where I really started to like him was in those late 70s comics I was talking about. See, he gets badly injured, saving the entire island of Japan, long story, and isn't able to be an active member of the team for a while. He's still hanging around though, kind of acting as support, and it cracks me up because he's such a mom. He's just all looking after everyone and looks all like, sit down and rest me boyo, have a cup of hot cocoa. It's just adorable. I love it. And I wish it was an aspect of his personality that was highlighted more.
Number 7 is Remy LeBeau, the wonderful Gambit, and let me ask you, what is not to like here? Gambit is relatively new, at least in comparison to most of the characters on this list, but he became popular really fast because he's awesome. Gambit is just so charming that it's nearly impossible to dislike him. He's the ultimate lovable scoundrel, although I find it kind of funny that he's actually really nice. Yes, he's done some questionable things, certainly, but for the most part, he's a pretty solid dude. He's no worse than Wolverine, certainly.
I also adore his relationship with Rogue. It's so sweet and pure and it's just great. I love how it's shown that Remy's the type of guy who, flirts with every woman within 5 yards, but doesn't take things seriously. But then Rogue comes along and suddenly he's taking things very seriously. It's so sweet because he loves her for who she is, not for her body. Although, he kind of physically can't do that without dying. But I think it's just very refreshing to see. The fact that they're married now makes me so happy. Fingers crossed that Marvel doesn't ruin it. At number 6, we have the Wolverine himself, and you're probably not that surprised that he's on here because A, he's Wolverine, and B, look at me. Obviously, Wolverine is without a doubt the most famous and popular of all the X-Men, and there are a lot of reasons why. I think my reasons for liking him are a little different from most, however. Because if you were to ask someone why they like Wolverine, their answer would probably be something along the lines of, oh, he's got such cool powers and he's such a bad word that I don't use. But the time that I truly fell in love with Wolverine was around the mid-80s, a period where he's actually mellowed out quite a bit, and he's literally acting just like this wise old uncle giving life advice to everyone and just being really chill, and I love it.
Obviously, I can also appreciate it when he's being his more usual cranky self who wants to snick at everything, but Uncle Wolverine is still best Wolverine. And yeah, there isn't much else to say. I mean, he's Wolverine. He has a complex, layered personality, a very intriguing, if rather convoluted backstory, and I feel like there are just so many dimensions to his character that it makes it so interesting to explore. Which is probably why he gets so much in every single adaptation. And yeah, he is that word that I'm not going to use. Going into the top 5, we have Rogue, and if you've watched any of my other X-Men videos, then you probably know that I really love Rogue. And there are so many reasons to do so. Her sassy Southern Belle persona is just a blast. Her powers are equal parts awesome and tragic, and she's also just a really nice person.
Even though I spoke positively about her more angsty portrayal in X-Men Evolution, I think it's so interesting in the comics with how she's essentially the opposite of what you would expect her to be. Rather than being dark and reclusive, she's bright and vibrant and cheerful, and she retains a brave, positive attitude in spite of all the crap she has had to deal with. I just love her, and my grudge against the movies will never end, because my gosh did they do her dirty.
At number 4, we have my dear son, Colossus. And yes, you heard me correctly, Peter is my son, and I will protect him. I love Colossus because he is just a pure, unadulterated sweetheart. The quintessential gentle giant, he cares so deeply for the people in his life and it's just so sincere and lovable. I also love the fact that deep down, all he really wants is to be with his family and be an artist. A quiet, humble character like him can be a really nice contrast to the much more loud, out there personalities of the other X-Men.
And man, I just remember in those comics from like the early 90s, I'm pretty sure, where they just kept piling on all of these awful things that kept happening to him, and I was just like, leave my son alone. It was so sad, and I do think that as time has gone on, his character has become more dark and jaded, but to me, Pyotr Nikolaevich Rasputin will always be the sweet, protective big brother, with the toughest skin, but the softest heart.
Coming in at number 3 is Aurora Monroe, aka Storm. And in a similar instance to Rogue, if you've seen my other videos, then you know how much I love Storm. She is literally the epitome of a true, strong female character. I know that term gets thrown around a lot, and I don't want to get into that whole kerfuffle, but in my opinion, Storm does it the best. Yes, she's regal and queenly and has this almighty power, but she's also claustrophobic and likes to garden, and she had the audacity to put this much product in her hair. I feel like she perfectly bridges the gap between strong and relatable, and she's just awesome. So get on making an adaptation that focuses on her, gosh darn it.
Also, Storm and Wolverine is a true OTP. Don't at me. They just are. There's absolutely no room for discussion on this.
Alright, and at number 2, it is none other than Nightcrawler. I used to say Kurt was my favorite X-Man, and it was pretty much just because he was Catholic. A different character has since deposed him of number 1, but I still love him, and not just because he's Catholic. While it is so nice to see an actual positive representation of my faith in anything, Nightcrawler is also just so lovable because he's so fun. He's a swashbuckling ladies' man, he likes to crack jokes and pull pranks, but he's also just really sweet and caring. And he's a fuzzy blue elf. There's literally nothing to dislike here.
Now, I don't love every aspect of how Kurt is portrayed in every adaptation, since they have a tendency to either make him kind of preachy or go in the other direction and not reference his faith at all. And this is really a whole discussion by itself, but sometimes I really wonder if the people who write this stuff have ever met a real Catholic in their entire life. However, it's better than nothing, and as I said before, it's just really refreshing to see a Catholic character who is not only a positive figure, but also a complete, well-rounded character with other personality traits and things that make him likable.
Alright, finally, the number 1 X-Man who is my most favorite of all time is Hank McCoy, aka Beast. And most of you probably already knew that because I've said that Hank is my favorite before. The reason I fell in love with Beast was because of his portrayal in the cartoon from the early 90s, but since he's very similar to his comic book self, I soon came to love him there as well. And the reason is because he's just so chill. Nothing ever rattles him or gets under his skin, and he literally feels like a guy you could just sit down and have a chat with. I also really love his quirks, like reciting poetry even in the midst of battle, or his tendency to use long, flowery words. I kind of relate because, in case you haven't noticed by now, I'm really pretentious and I like to do the same thing.
He also just has a cool design, although that can vary depending on who draws him. I think I've mentioned this before, but I just love the contrast between his monstrous exterior and his refined, intelligent interior. It's been done elsewhere, certainly, but Beast will always be my favorite version of it. I think it's such a cool idea that despite the fact that he's one of the X-Men with the most visible drastic mutation, in some ways he's the one the most comfortable in his own skin. Now I have heard that in some of the later comics, Hank's character kind of goes off the rails and makes a bunch of stupid decisions, but I haven't read those, and I prefer to simply think of him the way he was supposed to be. Intelligent, loquacious, and charismatic. And also strong enough to bash your head in, if you wanted to. So yeah, those are my top 10 X-Men characters. If you were to ask me what my dream X-Men team is, then it would be these guys. Plus also Cyclops, probably, because he's like, you know, the leader and everything. But please let me know your personal rankings. I would absolutely love to read it. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your November, and I will see you next time. The fact that they're married now makes me so happy. Fingers crossed,